and despair, and I perish with hunger. I will arise and go to my father, and will say, my father, and will say unto him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before thee. When you consider a wise son maketh a glad father, I'm going to tell you that the most challenging thing to me, the most challenging thing, the most awesomely, the most awesome level of responsibility a person can ever have, in my opinion, is raising children. It's pouring your life into the life of another life. And they're yours either from the minute they enter into this world until one of you go off into eternity. And it's certainly a challenge because there's a lot of things to figure out. You'll see, you guys, you'll see. You're going to, the very instant that child comes into the world, your life absolutely changes. And I'm not trying to scare the Koreans, and I'm just trying to say, like, in all seriousness. And the reason I say this is because a lot of people don't take it nearly as serious. You're now responsible for a child is going to depend on you, and they should depend on you. They have every, know it or not. I mean, when she was going to deliver the twins, I mean, I remember walking out the door, going down the steps. She said, you know, lives are never going to, I know, just watch yourself, don't fall. Yeah. You know, and true. They were 5 weeks early. It is developed as they would have liked, so he had to stay extra. And then, you know, she's pumping breast milk, and I'm running up there 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, I'm trying to limit the amount of, and I mean, you jump into it, you know, 2 feet. It changes your life. Now, when you're going to have to consider the following to have a perfect home. I think you ought to try to have it as complete as you can possibly have it. I think there's always room for improvement. Nobody ever has it together on a scale of perfection. But I will tell you that for us, I can't speak for a lot of people, but I can speak for us. We were always very, very mindful that Christ had to be the center. And here's what you're going to find out, and I think, I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, Lord, I mean no disrespect by it. You know, I think it's very, very clear that this father in the story loved his son very, very much, and if this parable is what I think it presents itself to be, then that father in some typology represents God. And so we don't want to be quick to, you know, start to correct the dad in the passage. But clearly this kid had a mind of his own. And he did exactly what a lot of young kids do. They rush out to prove their parents wrong. I'm going to prove not all kids, not saying all of them do, but some do. Even good kids. And they go out into the world and they are under the delusion that they are going to be the exception to all of the counsel and all of the all of the rules and everything that their parents warned them about and told them about. They're going to be the exception. And they forget that, mom and dad weren't raised in a Christian home and weren't raised in a Christian environment. And so they go out like this kid did. And you know what it took from him? It took from him everything. He's now on all fours in a sty fighting with pigs over husks of corn because the famine was so great. There's a reason why this young man is viewed as a fool. Now, if you get to the part of the story where we read up to, he makes his father glad when he came to himself and went home. But there was no gladness in the heart and life of that father while his son was out doing his thing. And any father that is glad that their kids are out there doing their thing is a very, very foolish father. I know of young men that said, "Oh, my dad took me for my first drink. My dad took me to have my first woman. My dad took me. My dad took me. My dad." And I think to myself, wow, what a fool. What an absolute fool. Wisdom must penetrate the noggin, or you will find yourself a Hagen. And he was in the pig pen. And here's where wisdom kicks in. He didn't have wisdom. He didn't have wisdom until he decided to go back to the place where he belonged. And do you know how many Christians right now are so backslidden? They're out of fellowship with God and man. I'm not saying they're not in church. Dave asked me right before the service, are we religious? I said, some are. You know what I mean by that? Some people think just because you go to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, you're a good Christian. No, that's just religion. Because believe me, when I was a good Catholic, I went to confession on Saturday, got up, went to Mass on Sunday, and for several of those weeks, I was serving Mass as an altar boy. I understand religion. I had religion. That young man, he had knowledge. But do you know when it became wisdom? When he went back to the place of accountability. And we can see how glad the father was when he ran out and met him and hugged him and fell on his neck. I think that young man became very, very wise. Now, here's the problem. Not that wisdom ever has a problem. But here's a problem that exists in humanity. And I know what it is. I know it's the sin nature. And I'm surely glad I don't have a steady diet of preaching to teenagers. But there was a time early in my ministry where I preached to teenagers every Friday night. And it's almost